Greetings, greetings world. Welcome to this Joko conversation. I am Youssef, Brother Youssef, a member of the Joko Collective.
And I'm Sister Tasha. Greetings, everyone. Member of the Joko Collective.
Our Joko conversation tonight is with lawyer, professor, activist James Simmons. And before that, we will have an update from the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition on the current condition of the case against the Uhuru 3. But before we do any of that, we always start with a land acknowledgement.
And yes, because we recognize as people of African descent, whatever our admixtures under the conditions of enslavement and colonial invasion and encroachment, we remain the children, sons, daughters, and children of Africa, um, seated in America, in these Americas, in this geography, on unceded territories of the peoples of this land, who are by no means vanquished, though the myths would tell us so, that there's no one left, that the indigenous people have been eradicated, that the imperialists were and the colonizers were successful in their endeavor. Um, they were not successful, and the cultures, the people continue to live their cultures, fight through the circumstances of repression and oppression, and continued attempts at eradication on unceded territories. And the work we do is on the unceded territory of the Tongva and Chumash peoples of the LA Basin and the coastal regions, among other peoples. And maybe Brother Youssef will give us some more of those people's names and place names.
Well, actually, no, I can't.
Okay.
Partly, I mean, not with any confidence, right? Be, other than knowing that there are actually many more around than we often know. Um, Here in Southern California, Northern California, the Ohlone people, among others. I believe the Miwok, are in Northern California. But it's hard to know those names because of the like double erasure, right? The the genocide, the quite intentional genocide um, executed in the 1850s, maybe even the 1840s, leading up to California's statehood and the whole thing of the Bear Republic. As they tried to pull a Texas in California.
Mm.
The And also in Oregon, right? A very distinct effort to clear, California and Oregon, the Western lands. And indeed, the idea was, just as they had done in the Southeast, right? To clear the lands of the indigenous people to transplant Africans, enslaved Africans into these regions, right? And, it's a much closer vote than people know that kept California from coming into the Union as a slave state. Um, and the Mexican population being able to maintain the tradition of Mexico that had outlawed and abolished slavery, in the 1820s, maybe, shortly after the Mexico won its independence, right, from Spain, and Vicente Guerrero, the African, became president of the Republic of Mexico, right? And among the things he did was abolish slavery. Um, and so we don't learn about the California natives, and I don't even know how thorough now, right? We certainly weren't learning about California natives when I was in grade school, middle school, high school, which wasn't, well, it was a long time ago, but it wasn't like pre-war, or, it was, during the civil rights era, right? And so that's that other kind of genocide, right? That other kind of disappearing, right? Removal from the record. That symbolic annihilation, like as you pointed out, right? Despite the mythology that there are none left, right? That they're all wiped out. This has never been true, right? Now they may be misnamed, like so many folks under colonialism, right, get misnamed, called something new or something they're not, given colonizers names, and so they might be listed as Hispanic and not recognized by the federal government, but the people recognize themselves, and that's what's key. So I see that our first guest,
Yes,
or actually our second
has
guest, is
arrived. Yes.
so why don't we jump to his bio?
Okay.
You want to read it?
I'll gladly read James Simmons' bio. And is he in studio? I see
He's in
happy face
studio. Yes,
at the bottom of the
he's
screen.
not on stage yet, though.
He's not on stage. I see. Okay. Got to get the brother on
Well,
stage.
after you read his bio, I'll bring him on stage.
Be on stage. Okay. So James Simmons is a human rights attorney, a professor in the Africana Studies Department at California State University, Northridge. He's a martial arts instructor in the discipline of capoeira, having trained with masters in the Angola tradition over 15 years. He is also proficient to instruct in Kali kickboxing and Kamau Kung Fu arts. Moreover, James is a political activist who has worked for human rights and self-determination of oppressed people and against their exploitation and abuse for the last 5 decades. A key part of James' resistance work is training and organizing community members for personal and collective defense. And we welcome to the stage our good brother and comrade, James Simmons.
Greetings.
Greetings.
So,
after hearing that, I felt like I've done something.
That's right.
right.
Roll out your scroll a little bit so you can remember, right? That scroll is a good memory.
Okay.
Yeah. So the topic for discussion, right? The word that went out on our notification is white supremacist activity, and maybe should be a little more specific. Militant white supremacy, not the sort of everyday white supremacist culture that we swim in like water, but that militant, intentional kind of white supremacy, and it possibly being on an uptick right about now, the kind of acting out.
Yeah, the violent, organized white supremacy. Because as I was reading the flyer, I was thinking, wow, we could go all the way back to the capture of Africans on the continent. And them being brought here, if we're just talking about white supremacist violence. But I guess I would like to keep it at that modern, organized white supremacist violence. And that the recent events in the Los Angeles area just kind of brought that to the fore with the indictment of, I think, 68 members of the so-called Peckerwoods gang, and a ally or a chapter or street chapter of the Aryan Brotherhood. And so they not only commit or organize for violence against Black and other people, they are also committed to living off of crimes. So, but the object or the subject of this discussion is the violence that we can be expecting, anticipating, not with relish, but with an eye towards our survival. So over the years, and just stop me whenever you want, but over the years, we've been plagued by organized white supremacist violence, since the Civil War, with the Klan, the oldest terrorist organization in the United States, with the various Nazi organizations, and then also organizations like the Klan, the Black Legion, the Knights of the White Camellia. Most of those have disappeared, and every once in a while, someone will pop up with the name, but it really doesn't have much connection with the past. But since the World War II, there has been some activity by so-called Nazis, neo-Nazis, who would like nothing better than run Black people out of the United States and run other people out of the United States. The idea of a white ethno state. And sometimes they're not so original, like the Republic of New Africa, just like a Black nation in the South that was maybe not first conceived, but popularized by the Communist Party in the 1920s, has now been, the Communist Party with the Black Belt South, the Black nation in the Black Belt South, the Nation of Islam with the 5 states as part of reparations, and the Republic of New Africa that was a collection of organizations across the ideological spectrum in 1968. These people, super intelligent Europeans, descendants of Europeans, have decided, hey, we want a white ethno state. If we can't get rid of Black folks, and it looks like most people are willing to at least tolerate Black people, then we want, instead of like the 5 states in the South for Black people, we want 5 states in the Northwest, and Idaho, Montana, Washington, and willing to fight for it. So that the modern type of racist violence, reactionary racist violence, was born out of the Aryan nations. There's always been reactionary racist violence, but the Aryan nations, the Aryan nations, the Order, the Covenant Sword and Arm of the Lord, all these organizations specifically were created to so-called defend white interest, and willing to commit terrorist acts against black folks. And plenty of incidents where they would be caught plotting the destruction of say like a black church. I don't know if you all remember when they were plotting against First AME, because after 92, it was, Tom Bradley and others were there at the April 29th when the rebellion jumped off, 1992. And so that image of First AME was broadcast as a rallying point for so-called racial harmony and understanding. And they were plotting to go in and kill up as many black people as they could. The FBI was congratulated on breaking up the plot. So it didn't really jump off. But we see around the country the lone wolf. So you don't have anybody leaking information. And the massacre of parishioners in was it South Carolina, in supermarkets, in other churches, in mosques, and not just black people, Muslims, Jews. This this terror, which sometimes makes no sense in other contexts. A lot of times you say, why would they do that? And then you find they have some kind of right-wing affiliation, and they and whether they see these acts of terror as specifically as part of the war against against black people and others, they essentially are. One of the things that there's an alarm now because of the violence of January 6th. Now January 6th is considered by Homeland Security as a security event. So they're on alert because they, those people who, especially if their candidate doesn't win the presidency, they may attack. But as usual, there is some fragmentation and competition on the right in terms of those people willing to commit acts of violence and their political influences and leaders. This is named Nick Fuentes, Kanye West friend. He says he's not voting for Trump because if you vote for Trump, you're going to have basically J.D. Vance and his wife, who's Indian, and Jews in the White House. And he can't tolerate that.
So that's too much for him.
Too much, yeah. So he'll give up Trump because he's loyal to the movement rather than Trump.
Can you speak in a more general way? There's kind of you've addressed this before.
You disappeared.
Oh, am I back? Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah. You're kind of going in and out. You're sometimes.
Okay.
Okay, because I hear you fine.
Okay, now it looks like you're synced. Looks like you're synced back it up.
Okay.
Okay.
You hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Okay. So then I'll be succinct. What I would like you to address or describe is, with some specificity, some of those antagonistic trends within the self-identified, self-declared white supremacist white right, or however you would want to categorize that collective, as a whole, and what are some of the divergences in that group?
Can we add to that characterization the folks who call themselves Western chauvinists?
All of
yeah,
those, all of those folks,
like Proud Boys, right?
Yes, yeah. All of those folks included. Yes.
Yeah, and so again, this kind of fracture and it's not unbelievable, but the very strange sight of a Afro-Cuban leading the Proud Boys. Now, whether he thinks of himself as an Afro-Cuban, he's still kneeling down at the temple of white supremacy. He says he's a Western civilization chauvinist. Like Western civilization is great.
Right.
No matter his presence on this in the Western Hemisphere is due to Western civilization, white supremacist violence. You have those people who identify as the white so-called race as the superior race in terms of intellect and industriousness and ethics and all of that. And but in terms of the violent ones, there has been in the past, again, since Nazism became fashionable in the world, and fascism, the Ku Klux Klan, who've been around since 65, 66, when Nazism started becoming a thing in the United States, they didn't like it. And I think even through the 60s, they didn't like it because they saw it as foreign. And, to hell with Hitler. And, either they or their fathers fought in World War II against Hitler. So the racist ideology, they're both racist, they're both white supremacists, they're both violent, but they didn't get along. And every once in a while, you would see Klansmen throwing up a Nazi salute. However, in the 70s, especially, they started sometimes merging, and you had people going from one organization to another, I guess some kind of cross fertilization, and they started joining forces. They started sharing ideologies, and I think the most prominent example of that was the Greensboro massacre in 1979. I think it was November 5th. Where a group of Nazis and Klan members rolled into a death to the Klan march and demonstration with instructions or the plans for the demonstration provided to them by the police. And when they rolled through, people, of course, got excited, started hitting their cars with their hands and stuff and signs, and they calmly pulled to the side and started murdering people. They were caught, of course, very quickly, charged with murder, tried, and acquitted, even though it was fully recorded. I mean, you could still see some of the footage on YouTube. But I think that was the first time that I know of that they cooperated and actually attacked and killed people. So there's again, like the Aryan nations, the white identity movement, where unlike the Klan, which are just regular old, descendants of Christian white Christian descendants of Europe, Europeans, and they say, we conquer this land, we get to keep it. We don't care about anybody else. A group, someone like Thomas Jefferson would have, and George Washington would have affiliations with. You know, they're going in that mode. The National States Rights Party that carried out bombings, and not the National States Rights Party of the Democratic Party, even though it was the same kind of ideology, but a group of Nazi and Klan supporting white nationalists. You had the those who they said, forget Christianity, we're not Christians, we're like Odinist or some other kind of European religion, because they want to be so pure. Christianity, black people engage in Christianity, and it might be seen as some kind of black religion coming out of Africa. So they would rather stay with Odin and all of those figures. Now they, again, have talked, but I'm not quite sure what kind of violence they have done. But the people like the Order set about to not start a race war, but engage in a race war and murder black folks and Jews and others. So their main thing was, we need to cleanse the United States and get rid of these people, the niggers and their Jewish overlords.
Right.
Then you had the lone wolf, which seems to be very popular. So you get one person walking into a church, or someone like I think his name was John Paul Franklin, just taking a rifle and traveling around the country shooting black people, or shooting black, especially black men who were with white women. So their ideology is just basically they don't like black people, and they should be eliminated by any means necessary. You have those people who have international connections, who have connections in Germany and Australia and other places. Like Australia said, if you're running away from Rhodesia because it's turning into Zimbabwe, if you're running away from South Africa because there's going to be majority rule, come to Australia, come to New Zealand, and you'll have a home. And then so you have those connections, those international connections. This idea that it's all Klan or it's all Nazis, I think is really misguided, because you do have groups like the Order, who may be Nazis in spirit, but they're not a member of a Nazi party. There was a group in Southern California called the National Socialist Liberation Front. I believe that. I guess to liberate America from the influence of the mud races, and which kind of brings up another thing. You have white supremacists hooking up with Latinx fascist. And this guy, he was eventually assassinated. He was influential, and so it was like, we're gonna talk like the so-called left. We're gonna kind of act like the so-called left, and so people like him, he had long hair, and you see that often now. but the order, those people, clean cut Robert Matthews, they again, you would think that they wouldn't want to copy off of black people, but they copied the tactics of the Black Liberation Army and went after armored cars and stuff. And I was like, well, you don't have an original thought in your head, huh? You want to set up 5 states and you want to rob, you want to do all this stuff, but you call black people monkeys,
right?
But the
well, let me ask you a question, James. The because I'm thinking, particularly you were talking about the Peckerwoods, and they, very deliberately using crime as a way of making a living or supporting themselves or whatever. Well, I started thinking about, what's the class character of this, this white supremacist violence, and are these like foot soldiers in any kind of communication or conflict with sort of the foundations, right? The white supremacist foundation, something like the Heritage Foundation, or some other this other layer of white supremacy.
Yeah, and I don't know of any. I think they're probably looked down upon because the crime they usually turn to is dope. Selling meth, fentanyl. Matter of fact, these latest arrests, they confiscated a bunch of fentanyl, weapons, and other things. So, in terms of going to the so-called ideological leaders, again, I'm not sure about that. Now, they may embrace those ideological leaders, like Donald Trump. The attack on the Capitol on January 6th, they may embrace those folks, but because those people are usually seen as weak and sellouts, and then those people who are leaders, what's his name? Not Nick Fuentes, but he's another guy. He's a right winger. And only violence I know he was involved in is getting socked in the nose by a member of Antifa.
Spencer? Oh, no, you're not talking about Spencer.
Yes, I am. Spencer.
Okay.
Yeah, Richard Spencer. And they use weird language. When at a meeting in Santa Monica in 2017, the right came out. And they were both racist and fascist. They had Latinos with them. They were celebrating. They had, some of them had T-shirts on depicting a helicopter and a leftist being thrown out of the helicopter, as the fascists would do. I think either Pinochet in Chile. Or in Argentina, the fascist government in Argentina, or one of the many fascist governments in Argentina. But they were celebrating that kind of thing. And in my conversations with them, they weren't friendly. They said they weren't white supremacists because, we're not racist. There's no race, and everybody is good. We're all one human race or whatever, and then turn around and start calling black people Australopithecus and pre Homo sapien people or species. They're not white nationalists because they deal with Spanish-speaking people, and it was the oddest thing to have brown-skinned fascists running with these people and trying to break in a meeting.
Right. What was the guy's name? The Cuban dude?
Oh, I don't know. He got 20 years though.
The Proud Boy, Terrio.
Yeah. Yes.
what's her name? Paula Ramos has just written a book about the rise of the right wing among Latinos.
Mhm.
And I think she has a chapter on him, right? And she knew him growing up in Miami. And actually, she talks about his difficulty, right? Being a Black Cuban and not matching, the representation of what a Cuban was supposed to be, white Cubans in Miami. And so being very both alienated, absolutely alienated from his African self, and in a particular way alienated from the Cuban community, even though he's Cuban, because and that inability to deal with that racial contradiction, right, within that community. And so is coming out in this, being expressed in this Western civilization chauvinism thing, right? Except that, what did she say? They threw him aside as soon as he got indicted. They're like, "Hey, we're done with you," et cetera, right? Reminded him who he is.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for him, he's doing 20
right.
years.
That's right.
Okay, 20.
But when they put him at the head of the Proud Boys, the founder said, "Oh no, I'm not doing this mess.
Right.
A Negro as head of the organization I founded. Oh, to hell with them."
That's right.
So, but the violence and the ability to use violence, because I'm sure he does not consider himself an Afro-Cuban. I'm sure he considers himself at best some kind of mestizo. And not quite Black. It's like you have Mexicans who are shaped and look just like the indigenous people of Mexico,
and are not. Yes, they're Castilian.
Yes. I wish I had $1 for every Mexican that told me that their grandmother came from Spain.
Yeah,
it's kind of like Black people. Oh yeah, I have Cherokee in.
That's it. Yeah.
Words out of my mouth.
I'm Irish.
It's a psychology we understand. It's a psychology that we understand very well. That
absolutely.
And you have people like Desi Arnaz, who looks white, but he was banned from television in the South. You couldn't watch I Love Lucy in the South, in some places in the South.
That's right.
And he's singing Babalu, basically speaking of the Orisha Babalu Aye.
Calling on the Orisha. Right.
Yes. But who knows? Who knew that then?
Right.
And what kind of African blood did he have? A dark-skinned Cuban. So we have these. I'm sure he's glorying in Western civilization and putting aside whatever African presence in his ancestry. He would have to. There are Jews who join Nazi and Klan groups.
That's correct.
It's like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Well, what's wrong is, there is this way in which we can be on the side of the greater good. And if the greater good and the progress of humanity, right, if we identify with white supremacy and the notion that, all that is good in humanity has, come to us through Europeans, which is the prevailing dogma for reasons of sustained propaganda over at least a century. What I'm saying? It's no mystery why. It's no mystery why people think what they think. It's years of particular kinds of indoctrination. So there are there are Africans who feel that, and you will have young African people, teenagers. I have young African teenagers express, I've heard it expressed, because I'm in the high school circuit, going day to day, subbing around town. You hear it, expressed all the time. what I'm what no it's best expressed, I believe, by Chris Rock's offensive joke. I'm glad my ancestors were stupid and lazy, or stupid and slow, or whatever, so that I be caught up in the slave trade, right? So there is a way in which human beings can believe that misfortune can be a part of a better fortune, you know? And white
as you say, I think folks have been sufficiently propagandized to that point, right? And
absolutely,
and, at least 100 years of mass media propaganda too. You know, putting that out in multiple languages, right? And these taken for granted, right? The whiteness of the world, the whiteness of history, the whiteness of progress, etc. Right?
Yes, all of it.
And not just mass media, but from the time of Thomas Jefferson, and before then, you are here because you are an inferior being. You're not you don't know Jesus Christ, and you have people like Russell Simmons. Saying, I ain't no African. I ain't no African. I don't eat animals.
It's not different. It's not different. You know what I'm saying? We think
in some ways it's worse.
It's not different.
Yeah.
We're still go on. Yeah.
No.
You know, so well, I'm not gonna label it and call it tragic or anything. I'm gonna call it a fortune and a blessing, in many ways unexplained, that any of us who have escaped it. You know what I'm saying? That any of us have escaped it. You know what I'm saying? And to be able to have a solid identity outside of this psyche crushing monster that is the cultural reality of white supremacy, and it eats the soul of all non-white people in the same ways. It's not mysterious. It's all the same.
It's not mysterious. A student from Hong Kong once asked me, "But don't you think it's a good thing the British came?"
Right.
And why, another victim of the colonial education in Hong Kong, and why wouldn't he think it was a good thing the British came? Right?
It's all the same. One thing that I do want to, absolutely. One thing that I do want to ask James, though, in terms of getting to some of those specificities.
Let me say before you ask that question that Mwezi has joined us. And we can give her, our last 10 minutes instead of our first 10 minutes.
Yes. As we're looking at that diversity among groups, and maybe the answer to this question is somewhat predictable, but because you've also looked at this closely yourself, like through direct investigation, what groups, and we can just, you can speak wherever you want to speak. We're in the Southland in Los Angeles, but what groups do we expect to see most of the heightened violence in this wave of reactionary violence that we're anticipating? What groups do we expect to see most of that confrontation coming from, and what might we expect it to look like? What might it look like?
Yeah, well, I would be afraid to say which groups, because they are created and dissolve. Like for a while, the Proud Boys were big, but after January 6th and leaders went to prison, it might be Proud Boys, but they may have a whole different name. They might have a whole different tact and a different strategy. Again, the Peckerwoods. Now, my understanding before this last week, the Peckerwoods were in Texas, in the prison in Texas, affiliated loosely with the Aryan Brotherhood, and the Aryan Brotherhood had enough sense to agree to engage in an agreement to end hostilities between the Aryan Brotherhood, Black Guerrilla Family, Mexican Mafia, and Nuestra Familia. So a lot of the violence that could be happening and would be happening without this agreement has ceased. So the Aryan Brotherhood, again, they're into making money through crime and drugs. So I'm not sure. They're very prominent. They're well established. They've been around for decades.
Right.
But are they especially with this agreement to end hostilities, would they engage in that, or are they just happy making money?
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that would compel them to enter this agreement is it's easier to make money when you're not, engaged in fighting with these Black and other people. So, and I have to note that there are whites who took an active part in fighting against the Aryan Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
One who used to come to the Black Panther breakfast and said that's where he felt the most comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the only white person at his, after he died, he was the only white person at his memorial service.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a whole bunch of Black folks from the neighborhood and Black folks from the Black Panther Party, SNCC, and others. But he was known as a Aryan Brotherhood Nazi killer.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that we do understand that, like there are Black folks who support white supremacy, there are white folks who support Black liberation.
Yeah.
Someone like Marilyn Buck.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I know this is a divert. I don't want to be like Trump or J.D. Vance or Kamala Harris, but in a side note, but I think it's important to note that people like I can't remember his name. He's such a non-person to me. Of the Proud Boys
Mm-hmm.
and other Black people, the Kanye West,
Mm-hmm.
the militant Kanye West.
Mm-hmm.
They could be engaged in warfare against Black people.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we're looking for white people, and they might be sitting next to us on the bus, in the next car, at the stoplight, at a sporting event, at the park. They might be turned against us, and I think it's important to note that. I know I only have a couple of more minutes, but I think it's important that we take note. Again, we've talked about it before, these Black Hitlerists, these people who follow this Hitler's ideology and his propaganda, and he's a great man, and you have Black people running around talking about this is how you nation build, follow Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And can those people be used against us?
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of when Maxine at the Oath Keepers coming to Maxine Waters' office on South Broadway in Century, there was a Black man there with a what do you call alt-right journalist, and wound up chasing the journalist away because he was so provocative. The white boy ran. He was running for his life, and it was funny because the white union people who came out to support Maxine Waters, they were laughing. He said, "Well, he need to run," but the Black man who was holding the camera, nobody paid attention to him. When in 2017, when there was the attack at Virginia Park, the attack by these fascists and Nazis in Santa Monica.
Right.
It was a group of 5, including a couple of Latinos, in July, and then about 50 of them came out in August, and some of whom went to what do you call it? January 6th. They were engaged in January 6th. They were engaged in Charlottesville, where Heather Heyer was killed. But the next month, and they were anticipating this great outpouring because of the violence in Charlottesville, hardly any of the right wing showed up for the meeting of the Committee for Racial Justice, except prominently the black guy who was at Maxine Waters' office.
Interesting. Okay.
So I think we don't know what kind of formation. I don't know what kind of formation he belongs to, but he's willing to go where there is going to be violence against black people. So, I don't know. He might even be listening. I don't know. But I think that's something that we have to consider. You know, and black people are so silly. Sometimes we will empty our guns at our own people and ignore others, or we focus on some white person, some even supportive white person, which is apparently an issue in the community right now. You focus on them, while again the black person who's standing next to you is conspiring against black folks.
Lack of critical insight, binary thinking, lack of context, all of those kinds of things. And as the pressure increases, more errors made because of those problems. because of those problems.
Yeah, not and linear thinking. Just straight ahead, blinders, and seeing black and white and not seeing gray.
Right.
So
right on.
Yes.
Well, yeah, it's getting close to our end time, so we'll go ahead and bring on Comrade Mwezi. Do you want to hang out with us, James, or
I want to hear what she got to say?
Okay, yeah, you can hang out with us. Let's bring Mwezi on. Let me read the bio first. See if we can try to stay on plan. Let's see. So Mwezi Odom is the chair of the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Defense Campaign, and Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition. Mwezi joined the African People's Socialist Party to turn over her skills to the Vanguard Workers' Party under the leadership of the African working class. In her capacity, she serves as the administrative assistant to the Office of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and leads the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Defense Campaign. Mwezi is a proud African woman, a lover of African internationalism. She believes Africa and her people will be once again free and self-governing in her lifetime, and she is the mother of two of Africa's best daughters. So let's bring on Comrade Mwezi, who will be there, and you're
Uhuru comrades. Great to see everyone. Great show. Yes.
Excellent. So you're going to give us an update on, where things are with the case. I know we spoke a couple of weeks ago after the verdict, and what people can do at this point.
Exactly. And I just want to, before I know I have a very brief moment, so I do want to just take this opportunity to really appreciate Joko Collective. I want to appreciate it's good to see Brother James Simmons on the program as well. And just, the opportunity for us to continue to deepen this crisis for imperialism through our intellect and our skills. And I just really want to salute everybody who's listening and really appreciate Joko as always for this opportunity. So yes, I was on just a few weeks ago, so I hope people, if they have questions, to go back and see what, what was the outcome of the Uhuru 3 case, which has been a 2-year fight to free and to remove these charges from Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, and to white, comrades. So as James was just speaking about, solidarity. Penny Hess and Jesse Neville, who have been under the leadership of the African working class under the African liberation struggle. And so these comrades were able to beat these bogus charges in the court on September 12th was the verdict that, they are not guilty of working for the Russians and in fact work for Black people, which we have always known to be true. But these bogus, and that charge carried a 10-year sentence. So that was a huge victory. And the second, other bogus charge was on conspiracy to, work, under the, leadership, again, tied to this other charge. And so that one, the jury found guilty through the great work of the prosecution to confuse and to really, dilute this, this whole conspiracy charge. And so we're still fighting. We're telling everybody the fight is not over. So in fact, it's not over, and we're going to fight back against these bogus charges. We're saying free the Uhuru 3, not one day in prison. And we're calling on everybody to join us in this letter writing campaign. So today is October 10th. We have 5 days for our deadline. We want to get a total of 500 character letters for the chairman, for Penny, and for Jesse each. And we're calling on everybody. If you know any of the Uhuru 3 as individuals personally, or you have had any experience with the Uhuru movement, or have been influenced by this really dynamic and powerful movement, to consider writing a character letter. And, what is a character letter? I know I don't have much time, so I won't go into all the details about that.
Take your time. We'll give you the time you need.
Yes.
Okay, well, great. So thank you so much, comrades. And so what I do want to say is we have this goal to gather at least 500 letters for each of the Uhuru 3. And before I continue, I want to invite anybody to go to Hands Off Uhuru. That's handsoffUHURU.org/letters. And if you go to handsoffuhuru.org, just that alone, you'll see there's 3 things that you can do. So I'll talk about the letters. Why are we asking for people to write letters? We are asking you to write these letters to help us have these sent to the judge to plead for a more lenient sentence. Again, this carries a 5-year sentence. Chairman Omali Yeshitela himself is 83 years old. He just turned 83 on yesterday. And he refused to have any last bit of his life be behind bars, not one day in prison. Same thing for Penny Hess, who was also, these are, some people even writing letters to say it's completely wrong to send an elder, to, prison. And then Jesse Neville, who is young, he's in his 30s. And so we're, really calling on the people to, make the case for why these comrades should not be, imprisoned. And part of what these letters are, as I said, character letters. So one thing we don't want people to do is to use this as an opportunity to convince the judge of why they are innocent or anything, of the sort. But this is about their character. And our letter writing team, our campaign team, has put together a really dynamic campaign around this. Again, at handsofffuhuru.org/letters, you will see all the guidelines and the instructions about how to write the letters for each individual. There are sample letters for people who are saying, I don't really know how to compose this, letter. It should not be this long essay or anything of the sort, but something that generally, thank you so much for putting that in the chat or, on screen, that it lets people understand, how, like what impact these, comrades have made. And again, the most simplest thing you can do is to ask the judge for a lenient sentence, or to allow Chairman Jesse and Penny to be able to do the great work, to continue to do the great work that they've been doing in the community. And so if you have not written your letter, or you, are curious about how that works, you can email us at letters, that's with an S, letters at handsofffuhuru.org. We also have on that letter writing page, and actually will probably be up in a couple of days. If it's not up, it should be up. I'll make sure that information is up even before the end, the end of this day, a recording of a really great event that we had just last Saturday, where many people came in and learned about how to write the letters. We had a letter writing workshop. Many of the letters were written on that day. People committed to writing a letter for each of the Uhuru 3. And the purpose of this is to overwhelm the judge, to know exactly who the Uhuru 3 are, and, again, without repeating myself once more, again, why these comrades should be allowed to continue to do this great work in the community. And on November 25th, that's the date to mark, is when the sentencing hearing is. And so this will be taking place in Tampa, Florida. And we're calling on everybody to come to Tampa, pack the courthouse once again, because that was, a huge part of our victory. Every time that the judge or the jury looked out into the crowd in the courtroom, they saw people who looked just like them. They saw people who were, old, young, of all different types of, nationalities there to defend the basic right to freedom of speech. And that is what these comrades are on trial for. And so we want people to come to Tampa, Florida, September or November 25th. By this time, the judge will have read your letter and will have, had an informed understanding about who Chairman Omali, Shatella, Penny, Hess, and Jesse are. And so those are the three things that we're asking people to do. Pack the courthouse on November 25th, write your letters before the deadline on October 15th. And even after the deadline, if you are watching this and it's after October 15th, write your letter, get that letter in, use the instructions. We have instructions there for you to send it to the attorney of each of the Uhuru 3. All of that information is there. And even if you want to handwrite a letter, you can take a photo and submit it on that page. And if you want to type your letter directly into the page, you can do that too. So we've tried to make it as simple as possible for everybody. And the third thing is to donate, because we do plan to appeal this bogus conspiracy charge. The sentencing first, that has to happen on the 25th of November. But following that, we are calling on everybody to continue to donate, to this fight back, because that too will take about a 2-year process to just appeal this, bogus charge. So, or conviction. Yeah. So mouthful, but don't make your letter mouthful. Just get your letter in.
Right. It doesn't have to be that long, right?
Right.
No.
Just a few key points on character.
Yeah, and there's some great sample letters there as well. You'll see on the website sample letters of people who have submitted their letters, people who didn't know, have not met them personally, but have been impacted by their work in the community. Those are great ways to know how to, fashion whatever you want to write. So I hope you comrades will join us in that initiative. And many students and educators are also having their students. So if you work in a place where you have family and friends that you think might be interested in the case for free speech, and to know that they are trying to lock up an elder, they're trying to lock up somebody who has fought for our liberation for over 50 years of his life, they should take part in this too. Uhuru.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Tasha, yeah, go ahead.
No, all I had to say was marvelous. It's the campaign is so well organized, and it's so easy to follow and so easy to produce these letters, then pointing out that it doesn't have to be a novel. You don't have to have known everybody for years and years or have followed their work for years and years to write an impactful letter. That is a really important message, and the sample letters are very helpful. All of that is very helpful to get the task done, to get those support statements in.
Right on.
Another excellent campaign.
Thank you, comrades.
And I just like to add. I'd like to add something. I don't know if this is you might have already have it on the page, but make sure. Like Black August, we write letters, right? And we have to we try to get people to be very careful. Don't start being emotional and start talking about death to the pigs and, all of that kind of stuff. Don't emotionally unload, because the object is to help them, not get the judge to say, oh, look at this crazy stuff. All the laws can't be checked, but people need to check themselves, because this is to help them, not to satisfy some emotional need that people may have calling names and making threats or what can be perceived to be a threat.
That's a great point, James. And this is coming from somebody who knows the law and who understands, that aspect of it. I really appreciate that. And your relationship with the Uhuru, three as an individual or the movement, personal reflections on their character and their leadership, their contributions, and why you believe that their work and their commitment to the work is essential, and not to try to convince the judge of anything, because that's not what he's looking for, and we want to work in their favor. So yeah, I appreciate that very much, James. Uhuru. And come to the Black People's March, November 2nd.
That was my next question. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations, of which Joko Collective is a really, dynamic member of this organization. It's a coalition of over 18 organizations, and they are having their 16th annual Black People's March on the White House. So they will be in Washington, D.C. on November 2nd, marching on the White House before this very historic election. And last year, we did something different. We also had a bi-coastal Black People's March. So we were here in Los Angeles marching, as well in tandem with the Washington, D.C. march. And there were other marches taking place all throughout Africa and in Europe as well. And we're going to do that again this year. So on November 2nd, we're calling on everybody to join the Black People's March in Los Angeles. We're going to be meeting at the corner of MLK and Crenshaw on Saturday, November 2nd at 11 a.m. And we're going to march to Africa Town, also known as Lemert Park, and have a wonderful program of culture, speakers from various organizations, and this is in support of Black people, the right for Black people to fight for self-determination, for Black power, but to also understand that our oppression is inextricably linked to the oppression and the resistance of the indigenous people, of the Palestinian, struggle and their fight against the, genocide, Cuba, Puerto Rico. I mean, every single struggle that we see happening. Last year, we had a fabulous march and a huge, display of banners and flags that showed this is an anti-colonial struggle. And so this fight is for you. We invite you to come and march with us, join the rally. If you have skills and, culture that you want to, contribute to this as well, come to the Black People's March. You can find out more information by going to blackpeoplesmarch.com. And clicking on the LA one. And if you're in DC or in other places, go ahead and join the DC mobilization, which will be the 16th annual one, very dynamic. And you'll meet the Uhuru Three. One of the Uhuru Three will be here with us in LA. Jesse Neville will be joining us, bringing a solidarity contingent of white people who stand in solidarity with the African liberation struggle. So if that's you, go to blackpeoplesmarch.com. And I know we'll see our comrades from Joko there as well. So that was the fourth thing you can do to continue to deepen this. So thank you for that opportunity. Uhuru.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I guess that does bring us to the end of the evening. Tasha, anything? You're muted, I think.
I'm so good at that. Muting and talking, right? I have nothing else to add. It's been a really great program, really rich. James, thank you so much. And we're going to continue this ongoing conversation. There's a lot to understand and a lot that folks aren't thinking about and aren't taking into consideration because we've grown comfortable in this world of access to public space and this post Jim Crow social convention thing. And the onslaught that we can anticipate will be hard to absorb psychologically as well as on a lot of levels. And we hope that specifically our programs with you can help and assist our community in whatever way it can become more informed and aware and clear about these dynamics. So we thank you and we look forward to the next installment.
Well,
Sister
you know,
Louise.
I
Go ahead. Yeah.
no, I love y'all, and I wish we could get it all in one swoop, but we can't.
No, so that means we got to do it at least next month.
Yeah.
You know, sounds
Yeah.
good to me, right? So,
Yeah.
keep the conversation going. I know Tasha and I have talked often about, what are going to be some of the results of this election, whichever way it goes, right?
Yeah.
The uptick in that kind of militant violence from the far right. So, and January 6th was a kind of a blueprint, and nobody was severely punished. Maybe the Terrio character,
Except
right, the Negro again, right? It's the most time. The
Damn fool.
well, that's how it ends up working, right? And the foot soldiers are, they're the fodder for the puppet masters and the philosophers, right? The dark enlightenment philosophers and all these people, and creating the world, as they want it.
Yeah.
But we got something for them, we have another world in mind. So.
Absolutely. And that's the world we gonna have.
That's right.
That's right.
And they know it too. That's why they fight so hard.
That's
so we
Yeah.
got to bring it too. Bring it more better.
Yes, it's a natural world. Nature is on the side of that world. So.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. So, yes, we will call it a night. Thank you, folks. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and most of all, really share, right? Get the word out. Wherever all the various places you can share, please share this information and write your letters. And I'm tardy with my letters, and so I'm saying it here so I can be held accountable. And really, my plan is to write my letters as soon as we get off, right? That's my plan.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
All right.
So do that, folks.
All right. But good seeing you, Sister Mwezi, and thank you for the information.
James. Great to see you too, always. Uhuru.
Appreciate
Uhuru means freedom. Yes.
Uhuru means freedom.
Oh, yes. Uhuru Sasa.
Uhuru Sasa, right?
Uhuru Sasa.
Right on, folks. We are about to be out. And yes, I'll say it one more time. Subscribe, like, and share. And if you're on YouTube, you can do the same. We'll see you soon.